So with investment highlights right now, the way it works is it's a Django backend, SQLite database, and basically it's one or two scripts that talk to SEC's Edgar API. It gathers all the info it needs from there, it processes it, and takes that clean data, puts it into the SQLite database, and everything loads upon button click, right? This is kind of a janky ETL process where it needs to go in the future, right? The extract portion needs to be expanded upon. So, what I'm doing right now is expanding that part. So, it will talk to Edgar, get raw JSON formatted data, and then post that to a data lakehouse. Okay, what does that mean, right? A data lake is a bunch of unstructured data. It's just stored in a specific place. So you could use an S3 bucket and just fill it full of JSON files, right? Great, but in this case, say there's 7,000 tickers that are being tracked via the SEC's database, right? So I talk to them, I get 7,000 files of data from the SEC. If I do that every quarter, that's 28,000 files in that S3 bucket by the end of the year. It's almost unmanageable. I don't want to deal with that headache. So a data lake is just a bunch of unstructured data that's easily queryable, at any time, right? And a data warehouse is a grouping of databases, basically, all in one place. So you don't have to go to a specific database. You go to the data warehouse to access that data, right? Fancy term used in the industry, I guess, is my understanding, right? I may be way off here, but a data lake house, combine those two ideas, is a data lake with more structured data. You see? So it's still a big blob of stuff, but it's more organized. So I'm going to be gathering the data from the SEC and then putting it into a PostgreSQL database. This represents the data lakehouse. This database will update itself dynamically. So as new fields are added, fields, columns, whatever you want to call them, call them, right? Not whatever. Uh, this will update in the database as new keys are identified in the JSON files. So most of them will overlap and you won't need to add new columns, but some of them will be new. The way that the SEC categorizes this data, sometimes the naming schema is very convoluted. Let's put it that way. So for Microsoft, they might classify their cash on hand as like cash and cash equivalents. But then over here for Amazon, it'll be like cash and cash equivalents minus liabilities, and it's the same value. But you don't know these things until you dive into how that XBRL format is set up. Like I might be using these terms inaccurately to whatever extent, but diving through it manually, trying to understand exactly how these data pieces are labeled, I'm working through it. So you talk to Edgar, you get the data, and then you add it to the PostgreSQL database. That's your data lakehouse. That is how I'm expanding the E part, the extracting part of investment highlights, the data, the tech stack that's there. Because right now it's automated to grab it, clean it, wrangle all the data, and then just upload it directly. But that's not the industry standard. Industry standard, it sounds like, I mean, I'm not a data engineer yet, but I'm figuring it out slowly, right? And so what I should be doing is grabbing that data and then storing it. So later we can analyze it from multiple points of view, right? So multiple people could draw that data from the lakehouse and then run their analyses or data wrangling or whatever they have to do, right? Um, so I'm adding functionality to take it, store it for later use. How exactly I'll go about that? Do I put that database on another light sale instance just for cost reasons, keep it cheap? Do I put it on an EC2 and manage every little piece of it? Do I put it in RDS, which is a little more spendy, but I mean it's pretty much all managed for you? I don't know just yet. I'm going through options for how to do it exactly. But either way, I've got to expand upon this data collection process so that it's more organized in its unorganized form. Does that make sense? This solves that problem of the 28,000 JSON files that would be in the S3 bucket if you were just having a data lake. Having a data lake house, you can actually add basically if then statements, right? Bunch of checking if the values have changed, you can update them because companies in their 10K filings, sometimes there's revisions. And as those are updated, so too will the data lakehouse data be updated, right? So you have a dynamic table basically where the data is updated in real time every time you do a scan of Edgar's data and then update what has changed, but also add anything that's new with those dynamic fields, right? Cash and cash equivalents minus liability, whatever. Um, that is going to be the most time intensive part of updating investment highlights. The transform part of things, we've just been talking about E in ETL, right? Extract, transform, load. E is going to be the most work intensive part because right now it's so not fleshed out at all. Uh, Transform part of things, transform. You're just cleaning the data, you're wrangling it, right? I use those terms interchangeably because sometimes you're not cleaning data, you're just getting it formatted in a specific order, I guess. Again, I'm not a data engineer yet. I don't know everything inherent in the systems that people use, but I'm trying because eventually that's what I want to go towards. I want to be a data engineer. So build something that teaches you how to do it, right? Um, the transform part of it, it's already there. It's already in the scripts that I have. It takes null values, it replaces them with appropriate values, whether they be zeros or averages of whatever the specific field is. It all depends on the CFA background that I've been studying, that I'm never going to be, right? Uh, because securities analysis interests me. So you take the data, you clean it up. I'm not really sure how to change what I'm doing in that regard. What I mean, it already takes it from the JSON that I get from Edgar. Okay, so in the beginning, I'm just gonna have to change that instead of having that passed down JSON file, it's going to have to query the data lake, the data warehouse, the no, what do you have? Data house, lake house. See how jargon, man. Um, so it's going to query the lake house, the PostgreSQL database from the eStep. It's going to get that raw, unfiltered, unchanged, completely raw data, and it's going to transform it in whatever way is necessary, which already exists, and then load that into the SQLite database that Investment Highlights is using. T and L are basically solved. I mean, it's some tweaks to the beginning of T, right? But E is where most of the work is. Does that make sense? I've got a lot of learning to do to go from this, like hacked together website called Investment Highlights all the way to data engineer, making a data pipeline that's closer to industry standard, more usable by more than just myself. Yeah, there's a lot of work to do, but it makes sense to me. Like I understand what I need to do, and maybe I'm missing some pieces. Who knows? We'll see as I go forward. There's always some little catch up, some little problem that needs to be solved as you're going through it. But talking with different LLMs, Googling things on Stack Overflow, looking at different developer roadmaps, whatever, just trying to piece together what it is I have to do to turn this into a project that's more industry standard, to understand the pieces that I don't yet get, to make it more easy to work with at each piece. Like you compartmentalize each little piece so that it's more industry standard. I wish I had better words for it, but that's it, really. And then it'll be in a good place. Like once I have that pipeline set up, then you just kind of set it and forget it, right? I mean, what was the DAG? DAG, DAG. I don't remember what it stands for, but it's basically like a recipe that Apache, not Spark. Spark is what it uses. Airflow. What Apache Airflow uses. It uses DAGs. They're like a recipe it uses to maintain the pipeline. So I put it all into that and it regularly does it over time. Kind of like a cron job. That's the way I'm thinking about DAGs. They're like a cron job, but the cron job calls a script to do something. So it's like a weird amalgamation of the two. Um, yeah, that's what I'm working on. Trying to turn investment highlights into a data pipeline rather than this thing that I built. So we'll see how that goes. Because after that's done, after the data pipeline is up and running and all functioning, I'm going to go back to adding features that are now promised on the site and aren't there right now. Like the valuation tool, I'm really interested in. I'll probably move away from comparing the stock highlights because, I mean, it's neat. I might add it, but I'm more interested in analysis of different sectors right now. So like the stock screener is cool and all for individual use, and there's some updates that are needed there as well. But if you were to go to a specific sector, what would Luke pick and why to invest in it? Again, the site isn't for investment advice or anything like that, and there's disclaimers on the site for all that. But it's an educational tool. Like, why did I choose these specific stocks in the material sector, for instance, or technology? Why would I choose those? And explain that reasoning. I don't know. It sounds fascinating to me. So I'm just going to dive into that after the data pipeline stuff. So fingers crossed, the data pipeline takes 3 months, 6 months, less than a year. Fingers crossed, right? But we'll see. It'll be fun. Thank you for coming along on this little rant here, and take care of yourself.